Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from deltacx.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy. Check us out. You might need us. And today is episode 138, which I'm kind of calling a CX and UX FAQ and AMA specifically about freelancing, contracting, and starting an agency. Now, way back many centuries ago on episode 8, I did freelancing and contracting with respect to contracts and agreements. And I recommend that if you are interested in this or just starting to get into freelancing, or even if you're not so new to this, you need to see that one because you might need a better contract. There is no substitute for a good contract. So today we're going to talk about, there's another Slack workspace that I'm a part of, and someone there had sent in a list of questions about trying to start up their own thing. So I've taken those questions and I've prepared them to share them with you. And I'm going to go through them one by one, and then I'll, of course, copy and paste them into the YouTube description. Quick show note. We'll be doing office hours Ask Me Anything tomorrow, November 23rd, and then I'm going to be on vacation, and our next show will be Reaction Stream December 3rd. So I'm going to be gone about a week and a half, but I will be on Slack. So if you would like to join our Slack workspace, if you have questions or if there's anything I can do, here I'm pushing buttons, there we go, deltacx.com/links. That will tell you how to join our giveaway, how to sign up for my Acture course, how to join our Slack workspace. Any questions you could have about this stream will be answered on that page, so get over there. Alrighty, and of course, won't you please subscribe on YouTube? We've just passed 3,000 subscribers. We didn't pay for any of them, and so I'm very grateful to all of you who have joined. So let's go through these questions, and if you have a comment or a question as I'm going along, please pop it up in the chat room. I am monitoring LinkedIn, YouTube, and tweets. So send yours in, and we'll get your questions answered as soon as possible. So the first question that was asked on that fine day in that Slack channel was, should I take the IDF course on how to become a freelance designer? Well, some of you know I run pretty hot and cold on IDF, and I generally probably run more cold than hot. So I went over to the course to take a look at it. And the person who runs IDF, and I apologize, I'm not going to pronounce her name correctly, Rika? Evidently, she wrote the course herself. So, of course, I went to her LinkedIn to see when's the last time she was a freelancer or contractor or consultant by her own LinkedIn. And based on her own LinkedIn, it looks like she hasn't done UX consulting in over 10 years. It looks like the last time she did it, rather than communication strategies, seemed to be 2010. So if you want to learn from her, you can. If the course has something good in it, that's great. But that does seem like a bit of a gap of time to be taking advice from somebody about these things. So I would probably, just out of caution, be giving a no on the IDF course. I haven't taken the IDF course, so I'm not speaking from experience, but I am speaking from concern that the person who, I don't know when that course was written, they don't have dates on them. I think that'd be great. UX, y'all. So there's that. Let's move on. The next question was, what does the sales process look like? So we've talked a little bit about this in some other micro lessons here on the channel. You can check the micro lessons playlist. And very often for me, a sales process looks like, and again, yours may be different, first you connect with the client, potential client. How you connect with them is a zillion different ways. They could find you on LinkedIn. You could find them on LinkedIn. It could be through social. It could be a recommendation from someone. You might have run an ad. I'm not going to get into what are the squillion ways that you can market yourself because that's not my strength. Marketing is definitely not my strength. It is a weakness. And second of all, there's so many different ways to possibly get a client that I'm just going to kind of start with what happens once you have that potential client. So normally I'm trying to learn what's going on, what's happening there, or what kind of project is this, or what do they need, or what's going wrong? What problem can I solve for them? This is your chance to CX and UX the experience with your potential customer. What problem are they having that you can solve? And is that really their problem? That's where, if you're really putting on your consultant hat, you can go in a little bit deeper. If you're not putting on your consultant hat, it may or may not be UX. They might be saying, can you redo our website? Sure, I'll redo your website. But if you're not using a user-centered design process, then it might not be UX. If you're not doing research and testing with real or archetypal users. So be careful there. But ultimately for me, a sales process looks like an initial conversation to learn as much as I can about the potential project or what problem needs to be solved. Then I'm normally creating a proposal, which I've shown a little bit in a previous micro lesson, so check that playlist. Then I am sending in that proposal, and then I am following up, and I have reminders to myself to follow up a week later, 2 weeks later. Normally, I don't follow up again after the second time. If I do 2 follow-ups with someone, either a week and 2 weeks, or sometimes a week and a month later, that thing is either dead or they picked somebody else. So I don't push beyond that. I just mark it in my sales pipeline as ghosted if I haven't heard from them, or lost if they tell me they picked somebody else, and I move on. Other than that, if the sales process is positive, I'm usually having another phone call with them to talk about the proposal. I don't read them the proposal, but we can talk about it and I'll take their questions. And then usually after that, we are either changing the proposal because they've changed their mind on the budget or the scope, and it can go in either direction. They might want a bigger project. They might want a smaller project. And then finally, of course, I'm writing up my contract and waiting on the first payment before getting started. So that would be the short version of what a sales process can look like. Next question was, what is an RFP? And of course, if you are freelancing or starting your own agency or consultancy, you're gonna see RFP. And if you're not familiar with it, it's called Request for Proposal. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's where a company draws up a document, the RFP, and it has usually all of the background information on whatever this project is, or whatever they need, or some goal they're trying to achieve, or something they're trying to fix. Again, this may or may not be the real problem. Keep that critical thinking hat on. And then they normally send this out to multiple companies or make it publicly available so that they can collect bids. They can collect proposals. Sometimes there's a limit to how many proposals they'll accept. Sometimes it's invitation only. But ultimately, the goal there is to respond to the RFP by the date. They normally have a date. Normally, the document itself has a very hard timeline, which normally gets all messed up. We need to have your responses. Normally, it's like first questions. They have a whole round of, do you have questions about this? We will accept questions up to this date. Then you have the proposal itself, and then they will pick who they want to meet and hold their meetings, and then supposedly they'll select a vendor. So an RFP is very simply an opportunity for you to propose or bid on a project that some other company has. Next, what documents do I need to send a potential client for a proposal or RFP response? Cool. If it's an RFP response, the document will usually say what they expect. So for example, they might expect your proposal, they might expect a timeline, they might expect a budget. They might expect a background biography on your company or your work. They might expect samples of previous work or a way to see your portfolio or case studies. In some instances, they do ask for spec work. Spec work, what's that? Think design challenges, but worse. Spec work is usually unpaid work where they want you to show your preliminary ideas for whatever their project is. As you can imagine, I do not respond to those because that is free work that you are giving to them that they can then use without hiring you. Also, I believe that when we do this, we accidentally teach these potential clients that we don't have to do all that UX stuff. I already guessed at the solution for this, and here it is. So normally I refuse to do those. Either I refuse to respond to the RFP or proposal, or I respond and say we do not do spec work. We are paid to solve these problems, and it doesn't make sense to guess at this and give you preliminary guesses at this, because guessing is probably how you got where you are now. So an RFP will typically tell you what documents they expect you to furnish. They could be legal documents like a copy of your business license or proof that you are insured. And they could be documents relating to your proposal or the history of your company. So be prepared to send any of these things. I am never asked for personal information. So if you see an RFP and they want a copy of your driver's license or your passport or your birthday or your mother's maiden name or your social security number, I've never been asked that in my life. That is probably a scam. Do not respond. Yeah, and then other than that, for proposals, I tend to send, as we talked about in the micro lesson, I tend to send a project plan, a Gantt chart, or so project plan and Gantt chart I always send, and then sometimes I send a Word document with it explaining in more prosaic terms what we'll be doing and why we do these things. So that gives me an opportunity to add some color to the project plan and the Gantt chart. That's my style. Make your own style. Next question was, hi, Irena. How do I estimate the amount of work this project will take? Hey, see our micro lesson on how I plan projects and estimate time. Mostly, if you're relatively new to this, you won't know how long work tends to take you until you start timing your own work and can kind of reverse engineer some sort of pattern. When I did this type of research with this many people, it took me this long to do it well. The analysis took this, the planning took this, this took this. Start estimating your time. Even if you're at a regular day job, you can start estimating your time. And then, of course, once you're doing your own thing, you pad the hell out of that. If you think something will take you 8 real hours of real work, do not quote 8 hours. I suggest you always round up and pad it and give yourself a little extra time in case you didn't estimate well, in case you're slower than you think, in case you don't feel well one morning. You know, I do recommend padding estimates. And you're just going to have to find what works for you there, but that's the way I do it. Okay. And then normally I only bill the client for the actual hours worked. So even though something is padded, it's really my insurance policy. If I tell the client, I think this task is going to take 30 hours and it takes us 25, if we've agreed on an hourly rate and not a fixed project price, I will charge them for the 25 hours. I won't charge them for the 30 hours. Clients love when you come in under budget. And then I can always say to them, hey, we came in a little under hours here, and I'm not going to charge you for those hours, but I just want to kind of have in the back, you approved those 5 hours. I just want to have them in the bank in case a later task takes a little longer. I might charge you 5 extra hours there. Larry says, I've always given my best estimate and then I double it. I charge by time and materials and the clients like it when I come in under budget. Totally agree. I wouldn't say that I'm doubling stuff, but I'm definitely, if you've seen my Excel spreadsheet from the micro lesson where I show you, there's 2 places where I round up. So I round up twice. I wouldn't say that doubles my hours, but I'm definitely adding a noticeable percentage just as my insurance policy. If I need that time, great. The client already agreed to pay for it. And if I don't need it, like Larry said, I've come in under budget and I'm a freaking hero. Okay, the next question that came in said, how can I make sure I won't get sued later? And this is, of course, where you need good lawyers and good accountants, but ultimately I recommend becoming a real business for wherever you live. Oh, Irene is asking a follow-up question. Let's grab that question and answer that, and then come back to the getting sued one after. So, I forgot to fix my questions thing. I can't put them up today. Irena said, don't you risk losing the project if your timeline is longer than your competitors? Not necessarily. First of all, some companies choose by quality of work, the energy they feel from you, and remember, if we're all padding, then there may not be a huge difference between the competitors. There have been a couple of times where people have said, like, why do you cost almost twice as much as this other person? And I'll say, well, reason one, if you want to show me their proposal, I'll tell you how it's different. They never want to show me the proposal. So sometimes I wonder if there even is a competitor at half of my price. The other one is that if everybody is padding and rounding up, then we're all in the same neighborhood. When we did a proposal last year to Etsy, which some of you know we did a project for, I padded that pretty nicely. I was happy with how I padded it. I wouldn't have padded it more. We did pretty well with our estimates. We came in pretty close to the estimates. There didn't end up being any wiggle room, which is another good reason why you want to pad it a bit. And they told us we came in as the lowest bid. So remember, just because you're padding something or expanding your estimate for what I like to call predictable unforeseeables, doesn't mean you're going to end up the most expensive person there. There are times where I've ended up the cheapest person. I remember putting in a proposal a few years ago to a company in Germany, and they after they reviewed the proposals they got, they called me back and they said, your proposal was the best one. You were the cheapest. We could tell that you were going to do an incredibly thorough job from what you proposed, but our boss wants the guy who's closer. And you're in Italy and they're in Germany and the boss is picking them. And I said, nothing I can do there. I was already the cheapest and the best. So you never know. Larry says it's a self-selecting mechanism. And Sirocco says, I like that. I wouldn't have even thought there might not be a real competitor. Yeah, sometimes people are like, I remember one guy came up to me at a conference and he said, like, what's your hourly rate? And I told him and he goes, oh yeah, well, my cousin, will do it for half that price. And I said, yeah, but you're standing in my booth asking me my rate. I'm guessing your cousin isn't that good at this. I'm sure he or she is inexpensive. Congratulations. But anybody who wants quality is going to choose us. And that's the way I've seen my business for probably decades. We won't always be the cheapest, but anybody who wants quality and a thorough approach will choose us. Anybody who wants something else will choose someone else, and that's fine. All right, so the question was, how can I make sure I don't get sued later? And part of that, the main answer to that is contracts. I can't tell you how many of you have written to me privately and said, I'm in trouble. Somebody emailed me with a project and I said yes, and we just went for it, and now it's a mess and they want to sue me and I have this problem. There was no contract. The contract is your insurance policy against a disagreement later. The contract you must absolutely have. I recommend having a contract with friends, with family, with everybody. Do not start a project without a contract. It is absolutely your lifeline. If they don't pay you, what are you going to do? You have no contract. If they fight you on something, who wins? The contract would say who wins. If they fire you, do they get their money back? If you quit, do they get their money back? These are things you don't want to fight about later, and you don't want to go to court over them. You both sign a contract that says you agree to these terms. See episode 8 where I walk through my contract in slow motion. Also, you might want to look at having a business entity and insurance for where you live. These don't keep you from getting sued, but a business entity is a good idea because it can take liability off of you personally and put it on a business entity. And having insurance is good because if you did ever get sued, you would have an insurance company to help you out there. Hi, Yasir. Larry says, my attorney told me you should have a contract, but if you do a really good job, no one ever looks at the contract. Just don't screw up. Well, that's true. I say I'm for people having a prenup before they get married. If the marriage works out, who cares that you had a prenup? If the marriage doesn't work out, you're going to be really glad you had the prenup. Take it from me. So I think that good contracts are important, and you should have it and you should read it. If they send you a contract and you don't understand it, give a lawyer money for 1 hour of their time and make sure you understand it, because people sneak crazy crap into contracts. You would not believe, hi Destiny, how have you been? How's the new work? You would not believe the crazy stuff I have seen slipped into contracts over the years. My favorite is probably a contract I got in 1996 where the company really didn't understand websites yet. So they had done a find and replace with the word website. And so the contract said stuff like, if someone slips and falls on the website, you will reimburse. And I was like, slip and fall on the website. Oh my God, find and replace. Make sure you've read the contract. There are many times that I fight companies on contracts. Ralitza can tell you, but she's probably not here. So I do fight people on contracts, and usually we end up changing the contracts and making it work. So the next question was, how can I make sure the client doesn't sneak in extra work later and get it for free? Contracts, 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 and saying no. So if you have a great contract, but then you don't say no to the scope creep or a scope change or the free work, you have nobody to blame but yourself. If you don't have a contract, the lines get blurry. What am I doing for this person? Do they expect this work? Can I really charge them for it? Don't do that to yourself. You're doing that to yourself. That's why my contracts have the project plan and the Gantt chart and the whole proposal that I wrote for them attached to it. This is the agreed upon scope of work. And my contract says in 3 places, if it's not listed here, it's not part of the work that we've agreed upon. If you want to add work, let me know, I'll get you a price, and I'll let you know how it changes the timing. But otherwise, I never, never, never do free work. As soon as you do free work, everybody knows you will do free work, and your price is negotiable, and you will lose control. Larry says, I had one client who tried to own all of my knowledge once I worked for them. No. Yeah, I once got a contract that said, any ideas you have or invent while working for us are ours. Now, I know that's a typical clause in a contract, but it was not written the way those clauses typically are. Typically, those clauses say, any ideas you have while working about us, about our company, while working for us, are you give to us, assuming we give them to you. But this one was written to make it sound like if I'm sitting at home and I have an idea about my own company, they would own it. So read these things carefully or get a lawyer. Sirocco says, that should be a shirt. Don't slip and fall on the website. I'm sure it is. I can see the stick figure now. Destiny says, doing well. Working in crypto is fun, but this contracting episode will help me greatly. I'm forming an S Corp at the moment. Good. I've got a C Corp of the state of Arizona, so I'm less familiar with S Corps, but rewind the episode and see episode 8. I know you're like, Deb has an episode 8. I sure do. Go back into the live stream podcasts playlist, or just go to YouTube and write Delta CX Freelancing. I think it's Freelancing, or let me see. It shouldn't be freelancers. Let me check now. Freelancing. Episode 8. Freelancing proposals, pricing, and contracts. So I've done a better micro lesson since then on proposals, but in that episode, I walked through my contract and I said, look, you can't necessarily copy paste my contract because it was written for state of Arizona, even though it started out as state of New York. But you want what my contract says, though you want it to work for your state. Larry says, make sure your contracts have expiration dates. Mine actually don't, but mine actually say you're not under any obligation to give me any work, and I'm not under any obligation to take any work from you. And if you'd like to fire me, just let me know. So I make it easy for people to get out of things. I do not lock people into working with me. If the relationship is going bad, let's get out of here. Okay, so how do we make sure the clients don't sneak in extra work for free? Contracts. My contract is very clear that if it's not in the scope of work that we've agreed on, I get to give you a quote. You have to agree to that in writing, and now that becomes part of the project and the contract. And saying no. If people go, yeah, can you just do a couple of it? Can you just, I've got something weird happening with my email. Can you just take a look at this? I can take a look at this for X dollars an hour, and that sounds like an hour of work. Please reply to this email and say, I agree to pay X dollars for you to take a look at my email problem. 90% of my clients go, oh, never mind, I'll figure it out. That's fine with me, but it teaches them you don't do work for free, and that if they come to you, they should expect to pay for your time. We have a client that my boyfriend handles, and they do that a lot. They'll write to him and be like, hey, this thing on our website's a little weird. Can you take a look at it? And he'll be like, sure, for X dollars an hour. And they'll be like, oh, we figured it out. So that's fine. I just want people to appreciate our time, but you have to create those boundaries. If you don't create those boundaries, and if you think, well, I'll just give them something for free because it'll make them happy, you will never hear the end of it. You will always, always be pushed to provide free stuff. They'll say, well, you gave me that for free. I'm just asking you to look at this thing. It'll take you 5 minutes. You really undo yourself. Irena says, I've seen agencies add hourly rate for tasks beyond the project scope. Yes, my hourly rates are already in my proposal and in my contract. So when people say, hey, can you just do this little thing here? I go, yeah, my hourly rate is X, and that sounds like 4 hours of work. Please reply that you agree to the extra charge and that being added to the contract. And some do and some don't. The client we had this year, we decided to change our approach to research. After they signed the contract, we wanted to add a few more. We wanted to recruit a larger group than we originally intended, and it was going to add about $3,000 to the project, and they agreed to it. Larry says, I offer an easy exit clause in my contracts, and sometimes I want to re-engage with the client once a difficult project manager moves or is replaced, hence the value of an expiration date. Yeah, again, that's totally up to you. I've never had an expiration date on my contract, and I'm 26 years in. So, I guess that's working until it's not. But my contract also gives me the right to end any relationship without notice. So if there really is a problem and there really is a difficult person or we really can't go on, we end it. I remember many years ago, I don't know, in the 2000s, before 2010, we had a really abusive client. The client would call up the people who worked for me and yell at them and call them names, and they came to me, and I went to him and I said, you can't do this. And I said, clause 9 of our contract says we can walk away if you're going to keep doing this. For any reason, we can walk away. And if you're going to be abusive to my staff, we're going to walk away. And he was like, okay. And then the staff got back to me and they said, he is still doing this to us. He calls us up. He shouts at us. We're thinking of quitting. And I said, no, you can't quit. You're great. I don't want you to go. So I called him up and I said, we're done with you. The project is over. And we'll give you whatever we've worked on, and we're keeping your money, and we're done. And he said, well, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I said, not at my company. The squeaky wheel gets taken off the car and thrown away. That's what I said. And he had nothing he could say back to that. So, the end. Oh, Larry said, I like to offer an early payment incentive, 2% off if paid within days. This works better than trying to collect a late payment penalty. Reward good behaviors instead of punishing for bad ones. Thoughts? Yeah, I have very rarely charged people a late fee, and my contract doesn't even say anything about a late fee. So I've kind of taken that as a case-by-case basis. I have not offered people an incentive to pay me earlier because I would say 90% of my clients pay on time, and that's good enough for me, and I just made 2%. So I think Larry doesn't have a bad idea, but it's not something that I personally have done or think I need to do. I'm happy if they pay on time. So remember, have boundaries. It's okay to say no, or it's okay to say, sure, I can do that. Here's my mini proposal on what it will cost if we make that change to what we've agreed upon. And they'll say yes, or they'll say no, or they'll say, oh, come on, help us out here. Say no. It's not a charity. Even if they are a charity, they're paying you. Say no. So let's see. The next question that I found on this list of questions was, what are questions clients commonly ask during sales meetings? That's all over the place. It's really hard to say, here's exactly what you can expect a sales meeting to be like. Typically, they might be asking, why does this cost this? Is there a way to do less of this or cheaper version of this? And that's up to you, whether you feel your proposal has any wiggle room, or if you feel like, nope, at this, for the outcomes you're trying to get, this is what we have to do. So that's a common question I'll get during sales meetings. Timing questions. When can you start? When will this be ready? Can it be ready faster? And I'll say, I can throw more people at it, but it'll cost the same, but we can try to do, here's where I could save a week if I put 2 people on this. Here's another place I can save a week if I put 2 people on this. But, that might not save you money and it might cost you money because I have to bring on more people. And then sometimes they go, oh, yeah, we don't want to cost. So it's up to them. Larry says, common question, track record. Yeah, sure. Tell me about some of the other projects you've done that are similar to ours. Or things like that. I'm working on a slide deck right now that's kind of a pitch deck that's got kind of the history of Delta CX and some of our greatest successes. And then I would normally that would be something I would show to people who've never spoken to us before and are open to getting a little 10, 15-minute presentation on who we are and our background. And then from there, the deck will go into what we're thinking of for them. Or it could be just stand alone if they say, hey, come tell us about who you are. And track record should kind of be in there. So again, it's hard for me to say what people are going to talk about during sales meetings. It's a little all over the place. Let's see. What is the meeting agenda when meeting with clients to present your proposal? For my experiences, it's typically introductions. It may or may not be your pitch deck. If you've spoken to them before, then they've heard about your company and how great you are and your great successes. If they haven't before, because maybe this is from a request for proposal and this is your first meeting with them, then you do that pitch deck. Normally I present the proposal, but I don't read through it. I do a more high-level thing because they've already received the proposal. So I say, unless they ask specifically for a presentation that is longer, the RFP would say. So sometimes I try to do the short version of what we're proposing and why we're proposing these tasks in this order, lasting this amount of time. What outcomes do I expect that they will get? And then I take questions. People usually have questions. Where do you like to steer the conversation? I don't steer it anywhere in particular. If they want to talk about price, let's talk price. If they want to talk about timing, let's talk timing. If they want to talk about staff and how many people are going to work on this and who's working on this, I'll talk about that. I don't usually try to steer it in any particular direction. I want to hear what their concerns are because this is essentially a job interview. So I want to hear what's on their mind and what I can tell them that will help me look like the winner. Yasir says, how can we set a budget on Developable when the client asks changes again and again? Yeah, so basically that's where you have to have boundaries. You have to say, if this is the work I'm doing, this is what it costs. If you make any changes to this, we will have to repropose or reprice or add to this price. Number one, you will probably find that they ask for fewer changes. Magically, when these things cost money, magically clients want much, much, much fewer changes, sometimes no changes. So number one, it's up to you to have boundaries and say no to that or say, yes, but it's going to cost you extra. Here's our proposal. You want to pay $3,000 more? We'll happily do that and make that part of the new scope of work. The scope of work document is the Bible of what are we doing on this project. And I also sometimes write what we're not doing because people can get confused. I can say, hey, we're not doing visual design. We're not making you a logo. We're not doing content strategy. We're not editing your text, or maybe we are. So whatever we're doing and sometimes what we're not doing, I put in that document so everybody's on the same page about what we're doing. When a client wants changes and changes and changes, chances are you've already lost control of that project, but it's important early on to have those boundaries and say, sure, we can change that, but we're going to have to redraw the scope of work and possibly change your price. And sometimes they go, oh, never mind. Irena says, in my experience, the more the client inquires about the details of the price, like why is this costing so much? Can it be lower? The less likely they are to hire you. I also agree. I have found that the more people want to push me on my price, not only is it the less they want to pay and the less likely they'll hire me since I'm quality over price, but I've also noticed that the more they expect from you. I've noticed this weird inverse relationship between the less people want to pay, the more they expect from you. The less people want to pay, these are the people who will have changes and changes and changes that they magically expect for free. Oh, the magic. So be careful of the people who are really pushing on price. You really want to have a clearly defined, signed scope of work from them, because they are going to be the people who, can you just give me a little extra thing here? And, can you just add this? And, now that we're looking at this, can you just do this too? And the answer is yes, but I charge for that. Siroko says, I have to go. Catch you later. Catch you later. Good to see you. How long are meetings? I usually book an hour, or if you want to be gentle, 50 minutes, to present our company, present our proposal, take questions, and find out what the next steps are. So could it be a half hour? It could, especially if you've already done your introduction to my company pitch at a previous meeting, and now this is just the proposal meeting. Could be a half hour, and I take 10 minutes to go through the proposal. Then we have lots of questions. Then we talk about next steps. The next steps aren't always send us your contract. Sometimes it's, well, we're waiting for proposals from other people too. We'll let you know. So it's a whole process. Will it take a lot of time to negotiate my price and modify the proposal with the client? Total unknown. Every client is different. I've had clients say, love it, let's go, when can you start? I've had clients say, oh, that's a little bit more than the board was willing to free up the money for. What can you do for this? Or I've had sometimes people add stuff. Sometimes people have said, we've been thinking about your proposal and we kind of got excited about the idea of doing this. Can you also do this? So now I've got to redraw the proposal to be more. So will it take a lot of time to negotiate and modify? It could, but I always do it because it's good practice for me to redo my proposals and present this and hear their questions. Just makes me a little sharper for the next one. Yasir says, how to set up the price for any project which goes out of scope as per the resources that we have. If you're charging hourly, then it's all about time estimation. If you're bad at time estimation, you have to get better at time estimation. If somebody says, hey, can you also fix our menus? You have to know, what does fixing the menus entail? Is this card sorting and information architecture and tree testing and interaction design and usability testing and visual design? Or do they mean something else? Find out what they mean, figure out what you're going to have to do, and this is where you have to be good at estimating time. I always say that I don't expect people to be great at estimating time until they're in the strategy phase of proficiency. Most of you are living in science and technique land where you're trying to do really good CX and UX technique, but you're not yet strategic about projects. And that's okay. You'll get there. I find that once people are working 5 or 7 or more years in CX or UX, they're getting more strategic. They know the difference, like, should I use this method or this method? Do I need personas or I don't need personas? How long is this going to take me? So it really comes with time, but it's all about time estimation. And remember, engineers have to estimate their time all the time, so they get good at it faster than we do. But we have to start taking notes of how long things take us and realize, when I do that for this many users, it tends to take this. And then you have to kind of build your own little pricing system. The next question that I got ahead of time about this, and we've got 20 more minutes, so please ask your questions about freelancing, contracting, or starting an agency, especially Destiny or anybody who's here and is on that path or just got on the path. The next question was, how do I avoid saying yes to unreasonable timeframes or too little of a UX process just to make some money? The answer is you say no. It's hard, especially when you're starting out. When you're starting out as a freelancer or your own agency or corporation, you want to say yes to everything. You want that first client. And if they say, you know what, don't do the research, just make me some screens. You're like, yes, first client, say yes. You don't have to. You really don't have to. You can if you want. I'm not going to poop on you, but you don't have to say yes. So questions like, how do I avoid saying yes? And how do I avoid doing free work? Say no. Say no. If someone gives you an unreasonable time frame, the first thing I say to them is, well, if you'd like it to be shorter, I have to throw more people at it. And if I throw more people at it, it might cost you more. So which is more important to you, getting it sooner or getting it for the price we agreed on? And sometimes they'll go, oh, yeah, we don't want to pay more. We were just hoping you could do it faster. I can do it faster, but I would have to add another person, and that's going to add 1,000, 3,000, 10,000, 50. I mean, who knows what this is? Whatever it is. So don't be afraid to say yes, but like your time frame is unreasonable. I can do that if I throw 4 people at it, 2 lead researchers and 2 assistants. 4 people are going to work on this. You'll have it in 3 weeks. Okay, but you're going to pay for 4 people working, 30 to 40 hours for the week. If they have that budget, okay. Irena says, how to avoid saying yes and no. Give unreasonable price so they'll never accept it. Oh, yes. Also the other half of that question before I answer Destiny's question, if a client is trying to chop away at the UX process and says, no, I don't need that research, just get me those screens, or I don't need to test it, just give your designs to engineering, you don't have to say yes. You can say, you've come to me because you wanted a proper UX process and you wanted this done right the first time. This is what it takes to do it right the first time. I said no to 2 clients earlier this year who would have been pretty big projects and projects I was excited about because pretty much they both told me they didn't want research. They said, oh, we just want the information architecture. And I say, yeah, but how do you think I do information architecture? I don't just show up and guess at your information architecture. We do research first so that we know the right direction to go with the information architecture. No, we don't want this research. Just give us the information architecture. So I said, no, I won't take this project. I withdraw my proposal. And if you're not gonna let us do research, I'm not gonna bother. Because ultimately, if you're not doing research and you're not doing testing with real users, it's not UX, it's web design. That's how I see it. Irena says, oh, you don't want any research. That adds 50% to the price. That is hilarious. I love it. You don't want research? We're going to charge you more. But what I said to that client earlier this year, I said, so far, every time I've started with guessing instead of research, thinking I was going to save a client time or money and win them over, they've been resentful. When we found something later in our testing that showed that my original guesses had room for improvement. Now, to me, that's a success. You always want to find room for improvement, and that's why testing is there. But the clients ended up resentful. They were mad that I didn't guess better. They were mad that I had to do a round of changes. So I said, now I just don't even take these projects. Not even going to take it. Destiny said, how to best balance clients? I hear as a contractor it's best to have a few clients, but I'm a one-person team and can easily overestimate how much time I have. Super question. Let's add that in on my list of questions. So a couple of things, Destiny. Number 1, start creating a network of trusted people who you could bring in as people who work for you if you find you're growing fast already. If you can do the projects yourself, that's great. But otherwise, start bringing in people. See who can you bring in who will do work at the level you need it for the type of price you're paying. And just remember that they're probably going to get most of that money. If you're charging the client $80 an hour, you might have to give this person $70. This isn't going to be giant markup city until you're a much more established agency or you're dealing with, different types of people. So do not overestimate your time. Remember, if you're estimating time and you're padding it, that's going to help you. I also recommend that people estimate their time as if they only have 30 hours a week. If you estimate for 30 hours a week and then something goes crazy and you need 35 or 40, okay, you had it. But if you estimate at 40, or some people will even estimate at 50 because they're really hungry to do lots of work, and something goes wacky, and now you have 60 hours of work or 70, it's going to be bad. Estimate like you've got 30 hours a week to do work. The rest of it's going to be lunch and breaks, but even within that 30, you're going to have stupid meetings. So you have to think about how much time do I really have to do this work once I factor out lunch, breaks, and stupid meetings. Now estimate for that. That's how much time you have, and that should help you not overestimate. Yasir says, for example, if the project is worth $100 and we push this to the client, but later on we came to know it actually costs $200, how can we help ourselves without losing the client? My policy is if I estimated something to a client and I found out later my estimate was wrong, I take the loss. I never say to a client, you know what, I estimated this wrong. I thought it was going to take 40 hours. It took 50 hours. Can you please pay me for 10 more hours? If they didn't change the scope, the mistake is mine and I will eat it as a lesson to myself. If they change the scope, then of course, don't do the work yet. Stop, make them sign something or make them agree in an email reply that they will pay the extra money for whatever this is. But if you estimated wrong and they didn't change the project at all, in my opinion, you eat that, because otherwise you are what we call in America bait and switch. You reeled people in saying this was only going to cost X, and then you said, oh, you know what? We thought it was going to cost X, but we ended up spending Y on it, so please pay us Y. Well, hold on. I only wanted to pay X. Imagine you're the client in this situation. Imagine if you went to a store and you wanted to buy a $300 item and they said, yeah, the sign says $300, but it's really $500. And well, you've already put it on the thing and we scanned it. Now you have to pay for it. Now, of course, that doesn't really happen, but you see what I'm saying. So I tell people this is another good reason to pad your estimates and round up so that if you know you are not always great at estimating, then you will save yourself from the example like Yasir is giving us where you estimated X and you told the client it would be X and it turns out you spent 2X time or whatever the case may be. In my opinion, if the client didn't change the project and you just estimated wrong, you take the loss. That's your problem and you don't ask the client for more money because that's going to hurt trust. Now they're going to be like, well, great. I want to hire these guys again. They gave me a price. I have no idea what it's going to cost. They might say later, yeah, we spent more time on it. So bad, bad, bad for client relationships. I don't do it. Some people do. I don't. The next question I got is, what's the action item at the end of a meeting when you are giving a proposal to a potential client? The action item is usually me asking, is there anything else you need from me to help you decide on this project or to decide on us for this project? When are you planning to make a decision on this? When can I follow up with you? Sometimes there is an action item. Sometimes they say, we like this proposal, but we want you to change this. Take this out, put this in. And I'll say, okay, give me 1 day, 2 days to get you a revised proposal. I try to do a revised proposal within 1 or 2 days. After that, you run the risk that if they're talking to someone else, they got their proposal in faster. You don't want to be the person who gets the revised proposal in a week. You have to prioritize those proposals. It's how you get business. Do not act like, oh God, I have too much work. I'll get to that proposal later. You always have to be in sales mode when you are a freelancer or your own agency. Yasir says, can we tell them we need some resources help so we're adding in a new budget? If you do that to me, I will never hire you again because I will never trust that your price is your price, and I will believe that you don't know how to estimate a project and you don't know how much resources are needed to get something done. I will imagine you are bad at this. I wouldn't do it. So you're right. You can say all these things to the client. You can say them. You can say, we need to add more resources. Will you please pay us more? What if they say no? They say, I want the contract price. I don't want this new price. What are you going to do? You can say, hey, I know we said this was going to be $100, but we did so much work on it. We need to charge you $200. You can say that, but what will the client say? No, I want the old price. The price in the contract is the price according to the agreement. If you go to court, there's nothing in the contract that says the client has to pay you the made-up fake number you change your mind on later. Typically, the contract says, here's the work we're going to do. We know what resources go on this, and this is what you're going to pay. And that's what they would expect to pay. If you change the price later, you are doing what's called a bait and switch. I'll write it in the YouTube chat. You can look this up, bait and switch. This is kind of an American phrase, and it's where you bring people in by giving them a lower price or a better deal. And then once they accept that deal, you go, oh, wait a minute, we really have to charge you this higher price, or we have to give you this other thing that isn't as good. And it's bad for business. It's bad for relationships. I wouldn't hire that company again. Would you? Would you do that? What if you went to get your hair cut and you expected to pay $10 for the haircut, and that's their price, and that's what's written on the wall, and then they start cutting your hair, and then at the end they're done cutting your hair, and they say, oh, by the way, my new price is $50. And you go, well, I don't want to pay that. And they go, but we cut your hair too late. Pay us. Nobody wants this. All right, let's look at the last question. So the last question I'd gotten ahead of time, and then we'll answer any other questions with our last few minutes, was, how can you sell UX and especially research if clients don't understand the value of UX? If they don't understand, so my question is, if they don't understand the value of UX, what were they going to hire you to do? Is this just web design? Hey, we need some new landing pages. Make us landing pages. Hey, here's your landing pages. No research, no testing. I made you landing pages. That's web design. That's not UX. If the client is trying to hire you and doesn't understand the value of UX, like the 2 potential clients I had earlier this year who wanted information architecture without any research, then you have the right to say no. You have the right to say, I'm sorry, I only take work that sets projects and clients up for success. I'm not setting you up for success if you hire me to guess at stuff by skipping on the research. And chances are guessing at stuff is how we got here today, with us needing to look at this again or fix this. So you have the right to say no. You have the right to say yes, but. You have the right to say only if. You have the right to say, okay, we'll skip research, but we have to do testing. And then we have to do a round of iterations after testing. You have the right to say whatever you want, and they might still say, no, we don't want, like I had earlier this year, no, we don't want that research. Just give us the information architecture. No, that's not going to fly. You're going to be totally unhappy with my guesses on this project, and that's going, once you're resentful towards me, that relationship is over. So I'm not even going to go there. So I think that you have to ask yourself, what is the hill that you die on? If somebody says, we want you to design this thing and we're not going to test it and we're not going to research it, we're just going to go with some cool ideas and give them to engineering, you have to decide, do I still want that project? And if you're trying to build up a portfolio or an agency website, is that a project you would put on your website? Because that sounds like you were an order taker. You were not necessarily a problem finder and problem solver. Someone said, make us some landing pages and some marketing emails. You made landing pages and marketing emails. No users were involved in this. Is it still UX? Does it look good on a UX website? We had this a couple of weeks ago where someone sent me for Reaction Stream some sort of UI UX agency. And when I went to their website, there was nothing on their website that looked like UI or UX. It looked like it was all web design, where it's like, this client wanted a new website for their thing, so we made them a new website. And I was like, this isn't UI or UX. So that fools some people, won't fool everybody. So you have to decide what sort of agency or company or whatever you are. You know, will you take web design projects that have no UX research and no UX testing? Or do you have standards? Hey, at the very least, we've got to do testing. Depending upon what it is, sometimes I will let them go without research if I think it won't super murder the project. But I will insist on testing. I won't take anything that's no research and no testing. There has to be at least testing. But where people have come to me with what were like $150,000 information architecture projects, I'm not going to guess at that. Your information architecture is terrible. I'm not going to guess at better information architecture. I'm going to be research informed. If it were smaller, fine. You want a marketing email? I'll make you a marketing email. But At this point, I won't make you a marketing email. I used to. But my point is, you have to decide your boundaries. And each of us is going to be different. Stuff I won't take, you'll take. Stuff you won't take, I'll take. So it's not like y'all have to follow my way. But you have to have boundaries and standards and decide what hill you're dying on. And I've decided that, and I've stuck to that, and I'm happy with the projects we've had, and I'm sorry for some of the projects we didn't do, but I'm happy that I didn't do them because they weren't going to go well. They weren't going to be things I could put on my website. I wasn't going to be like, hey, check out my website. I guessed at these people's information architecture. That IA project was too important for anyone to guess at it. And the client was clearly confused because later in the meeting, it was a very short meeting, they were like, well, do you at least agree with our approach? I said, absolutely not. I said, even if we absolutely never work together, which we won't because I'm refusing to do this project, you should still hire someone who is going to do research first. That's it. And then I found out later that everybody who had proposed to them had told them the same thing. And now they were looking for more companies to propose to them because they still didn't want to pay for the research. You would think they would get the hint when all of the companies that proposed said, we won't skimp on the research. Oh, well. So we've got just a few more minutes. Thanks so much for everybody who joined today and listened and joined in and asked questions. We've got a few more minutes. Please do ask your questions. Let's see what else is going on. So just remember, I'm going on vacation on Wednesday. If you're watching this live, if you're listening on the podcast, there's going to be no shows after Tuesday office hours until December 3rd. We'll do reaction stream. Oh, Adam, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining. Say hi to Peter. In the beginning, it's hard to have those rules. I agree. When I first started my freelancing thing and my agency, I said yes to everything until I said yes to something that didn't totally match me ethically. And I said yes. And then about a month later, I was like, I have to get out of this. And I did. And it worked out fine. And then after that, I said, okay, I'm not going to do that again. And I think that especially when you're starting out, you might say yes to everything. And eventually you're going to go, I'm not going to do that again. You know, certainly I've had times where I've tried to just do the design and pass it off to someone. But then I decided I'm not going to do that again. At the very least, we must have testing and a round of iterations. And I strongly prefer research, even if we have to shorten some of the research. Yasir says, how can we say, client, you are wrong without saying you're wrong? It depends on what they're wrong about. Sometimes I can say, well, that's not really a best practice. Or that's not really what's commonly done. Or, you've hired us to be problem finders and problem solvers. That misses the problem finding part. So, you don't want to say you're wrong. Sometimes I try to make it sound like, oh, your information is a little bit outdated. We used to do that stuff, but we don't really do that stuff that way anymore. So I would have to have a more specific example of what a client was wrong about to know how I would handle that, because each situation is going to be different. There isn't one way to tell a client they were wrong. And also you have to make sure you really want to tell the client they're wrong because, what do you win? If it is a disagreement with a client over a decision or something like that, it's not important to tell them they're wrong. It's important to tell them why your decision is the better way and how you know that. Yazir says, on any MVP discussion. Yeah, so the problem is many clients who want an MVP from usually a development shop or a UX and development shop, they already want it to look exactly like the idea they have. They usually don't want you to make any changes or be creative or make it better. If your company has decided that you build MVPs for companies and you are just a pair of hands doing that coding or whatever, then that's what the client expects from you. That's the expectation that's been set. The expectation has been set that we are just a coding shop. We write code. We have somebody who makes wireframes. We write code. We make your MVP. If the company wants to be more of a consultancy and say, We're experts. We're going to help advise you on stuff. If the client wants advice, they pick someone like me and like many of you. If the client just wants the people who will code the thing they already have or already know they want, so it's who does your company want to be? Chances are, Yasir, the company where you're working at, I don't think this is your own company, the company where you're working at has decided yes to everything. We'll code anything. We don't want to say no. We don't want to put up a fight. We'll code anything. Client is wrong. We build it anyway. Once you've established that, that's who your company is. And if you try to go to a client and say, we have a better idea here, the client doesn't expect that relationship with you. The client expects you to do what they say. That's the difference between being an order taker and being a problem finder and problem solver. If you at any point turn into an order taker to a client, I have found that, sorry, my hair is crazy. I found that relationship changes forever. As soon as you take orders, the client knows that you will take orders and they will say, I don't want your ideas or advice here. Just make the thing. We want the thing. We hired you to make the thing. Make the thing. So you have to decide what type of relationship you want with clients and if you are looking to be that advisor and expert to them, or if you are just a pair of hands getting it done for them. So you have to be careful. So yeah, it's hard to have standards and it's hard to make rules, but do yourself a favor. You can make those standards and make those rules now and start saying no to people, or yes, but, or yes, if. Or you can wait until you have a tough experience and say, okay, I'm never going to do that again. New standards. Up to you. You get to pick. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up the show. I will see everybody tomorrow for Office Hours Ask Me Anything. Then I'm taking off a week and a half. I will be available on the Slack channel, which you can join. You can find the link here on deltacx.com/links. I'm there from time to time. Also, quick thank you to the people who are financially donating to the channel through YouTube memberships. Very grateful for all of you. So thanks to our mid-level and a senior level low ego action heroes, Anita, Chang, Darren, Ican, Irena, Jordan, Michelle, Nikki, Ralitza, Ray, Solomon, and of course, our senior low ego action hero, Mix Betty. So of course, financially supporting the channel is totally optional, but always appreciated. And, that's, again, totally optional. The links page has a link to tip if you'd like to do that too, also optional. So I'm going to play us out of here. Everybody be well and safe, and I will catch you tomorrow for Office Hours Ask Me Anything. Bye, everybody. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are